Menza here, and I just wanted to show you, these are the three brushes that I'm going to be mainly using in this 2.0 season. A hake brush, fan brush, and a rigger brush. I like to use a large and a small or medium hake brush. Also, you'll hear them referred to as hake brushes. And I have this water bottle people were asking me about. It's what you call a continuous spray water bottle. It has kind of like a pressure type mechanism that causes it to spray continuously in a very fine mist. So I'm working once again with the Fabriano 140 pound 11 by 14 paper, and I've sprayed it on. And I like to use that bottle to spray it on because the water is nice and clean. In your cup, sometimes it gets dirty. So I'm going to take and I'm going to work on making a nice blue sky with a little gray, have the little clouds in there. So I'm just going to mix a little bit of that up and just start placing it in there randomly. There's really no rhyme or reason. Just start putting paint on paper. Just kind of blending it. I'm going to try not to let it run. I do have my board at about a 45-degree angle or so. And this is cerulean blue. It's a nice sky color. And I'm randomly putting it in there, just letting the paint flow. And I know this is a little different than maybe like a Ron Ranson type would do a sky, but this is kind of like in the lines of Wesson or, some of the other ones. It's kind of got that vibe to it in the sky. So we'll do a combo. We'll do sort of a Wesson meets Ranson or something. I know he was big on him, but the idea of this is that fast and loose, quickly laying it in. I read somewhere, I think Wesson, he would do 3 or 4 paintings in the morning, and then he'd go outside and cut his lawn. So funny little tidbit. So I'm coming in here with my brush, and I'm just kind of sopping up a little bit of where there's just a little too much excess paint. We don't want any hard lines. Now, if you're working on cotton paper, this will probably work even a little bit better. I use cotton paper sometimes, but I like to use, this is 25% cotton. I like to use an economical paper. I think a lot of beginners out there are going to be hesitant to go out and spend a lot of money on supplies. So I try to use what you might use. And we'll get results. We'll get results we're happy with. And if you decide down the road, I want to be a, professional, make this a career, you can go buy much more professional equipment. But student grade paint and, combination of paper, a little bit of cotton in there. And I think we have a nice happy medium going. And you can still get results and be happy with what you're doing. Have a good time. So we pretty much have our sky in here. And what we want to do is that we're going to put something about, 75% or so down the paper just to, without anything on the bottom, the sky isn't really going to look like much of anything. Maybe you got a tea stain on your paper. So I'm going to take a little bit of green here. The idea, too, with this method is to try to keep a limited palette, or, you can try different colors if you want to. I've got a sap green here, and I find if you take sap green, maybe you add a little red to it. It tampers it down a little bit. You can add a little bit of yellow. I can do yellow and blue and make my own green, but you can take existing greens and kind of tweak them a little bit just to kind of get there quicker. So I'm going to put in some green hills in the background here. A little Ron Ranson inspired sort of foreground. As you can see now, as we're putting in these little hills, it makes that sky look more like a sky. So you just want to put these in here, very deliberately. Try to keep your strokes at a minimum. You don't want to keep going over and over something. The fresher and more spontaneous it'll look. Now I'm going to add a little bit of Payne's Gray to this. And just kind of anchor that bottom down just a little bit. little bit of lemon yellow here. I have 3 yellows. A little bit of cad yellow hue. Just want to come up with a nice yellow to use below here. I'm going to start working on a foreground, a little bit of grassy area. I'm not really sure how it's going to unfold. I just kind of follow the paint where it goes. One thing I like to do is I like to keep a scrap piece of paper handy. It's all fine and good to mix your paints in a tray and look at the color, but sometimes touching it on the paper will give you, if you're looking for that certain, yellow tone or whatever, you can take like a scrap piece of paper like this one and just, mark it down. It's like I'm looking for something in the more sort of orangey range. Maybe add a little bit of brown to it. That's just right. Looking for like a sort of a ground color here. And of course I'm going over the top of yellow, so there's a little bit of transparency there. I like having a couple of different colors for each layer or for each object, a tree, mountain, whatever, in a lot of cases, because it will give it just a little bit more dimension. If you want more of the Wesson type of look, you can go for the purity, which would be just straight color. And it'll have sort of that storybook quality to it. I'll go ahead and put a little tree here. I'm taking advantage of the tips of the bristles of the brush, with it being somewhat dry and having a little bit of colors on my tray already. So I'm putting a little green, just darkening it up a little bit from previous painting. And just sort of putting in maybe a couple of little trees, scratching in with my fingernail some branches and some sticks. And then I'll come back with a little bit darker of a green and I'll go over the top of that. Then I'll give it a little bit of that two-tone look I was talking about. A little bit of dry brushing at the top of the tree, and just to have some space, almost as if there's some branches there. Yeah, so a lot of times I look at like something I'm painting and I just don't accept it as finished without doing a little bit more dimension or some dry brushing or something. Just, I don't know, I'm a little happier when I think it looks a little more realistic. It should, to me, like have an artistic look to it, but there should be some quality between the light and dark contrast and something that catches your eye and still has an artistic flair to it. And of course, that's just the thing. We're not always happiest with our own work. One thing I find is it can be discouraging for the beginner to look at really good, I shouldn't even say good, I should say experienced artists that have been doing this for a long time, because it sets the bar too high for yourself. And you should be setting your own bar toward your own small victories. And I've had some people ask, they say, well, when do I know my painting's finished? They don't know when they're painting, when they're done, if they're making something up. Well, one person had said one time, if you're looking for things to do, then you're probably finished. You don't want to kind of keep looking around, should I add, and keep adding, and then you have this full painting. So keep it simple, and if you really need to, go off of photos. There's free photo sites, and there's a group on Facebook, landscape reference photos for artists. Really good group. A lot of people send in photos, and you can use them and sell your paintings. So really, I'm just looking at the lay of the land here. I'm just kind of dropping in some different greens and things. We got the yellow ochre, we've got the green, the sap green, and blue. We're at a minimal amount of color here, really. But if you need good grays, one way to get good grays is just mix everything up that's on your palette from your last painting, and you'll come up with some grays. In the beginning when I was doing this, I had a hard time with that, believe it or not. That was one of the things. It was like, how do I make gray? And I mean, you can use Payne's gray, and you can make it very weak, but it's not the same as like making a variety of different grays. And for whatever reason, when you mix up a bunch of paint on your tray, you get a gray. You might get a greenish gray, brownish gray, depending on what you were doing. So I'm just going to take my little micron pen. I'm popping in a couple of birds. People ask me, why don't you use a brush for that? Because, I don't know, I just feel like I'll slip, my hand gets a little shaky, and I'll ruin the whole painting putting a bird in. Same thing goes for writing my name. So I'll use the same pen again for writing my name. I can't tell you how many times I've written my name on a painting, and like I wasn't happy with how I wrote my name. It's kind of a weird thing to have a problem with, but it's there. I like to put the mat on it and then sign it. This way I can get an idea it's in the corner. I think when you're judged in various painting and art shows, there's a exact area where it has to be relegated to. Although I was in the Florida Keys recently, and I was in an art gallery there, and I noticed there was a couple of paintings. I forget the artist's name. I think it was like Matt or Max or something. And his paintings were signed in like the most unusual places. Like up at the top and right. I've just never seen it before, but I guess that's his thing. So I've scraped in a few rocks here, and I'm anchoring those to the ground by getting a little darker color, either Payne's gray or indigo. I like using indigo almost as a Payne's gray. It's like a purpley Payne's gray, but it can have the same effect, so you have to be careful. It can have that deadened look, and it could look really dark. So that's it for this painting. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for joining me on yet another art installment. Let's take a look at this. Now, this is on my board. I had a person ask me, what is it when you say virtual frame? Well, there's an app called Frame Builder. It's on the iPhone, and it'll actually put a mat around any photo that you have. So if you're wondering what that meant, that's what virtual frame means. Let's zoom in and look real close at this. You can see how the different elements of the clouds play in there. The tree, little details in the tree. It looks like we spent hours and hours putting details on here, but we didn't. Down into the rocks area, and it just looks like tons of details there. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.